What's going on, everybody? Today we have some unfortunate news coming out of Cedar Point about Top Thrill Dragster. The park came out and announced that Top Thrill Dragster will not reopen for the 2022 season, following the Ohio Department of Agriculture's investigation of an incident that happened this past summer. This past August, a 44-year-old Michigan woman was injured when she was struck in the head by a metal object that came off of the roller coaster. The woman was hit in the back of the head with a piece of L-shaped metal that is about the size of an adult male's hand. The piece of metal that came off of this ride is known as a flag plate and communicates with the ride's operating system that the particular train is through a portion of the ride. After the inspection, it was revealed that the plate was missing from the left side of the ride's green train. Half of the bolt that secured the plate to the train was still in place. Following the incident, Top Thrill Dragster remained closed for the rest of the 2021 season, and that will be continuing into 2022. The Ohio Department of Agriculture said after a thorough review that Cedar Fair was not knowingly violating any laws. The chief of the Amusement Ride Safety Division for the Ohio Department of Agriculture said the track near the finish line showed signs of impact and deformation, and several horizontal beams beyond that point also show signs of impact. After examination, a lab showed that one of the cap screw fasteners backed out of the bogie frame, resulting in failure by instantaneous overload fracture. The cap screw fasteners are bolts that secure the flag plate onto the ride. To me, this report indicates that what we thought was true, and appears that this is just a freak accident. However, I do not believe the accident itself is causing for the ride's closure. More so, the effects of the accident and changes that have to be made are the main driving forces behind this coaster being closed for the entirety of the 2022 season. This almost certainly guarantees the park feels that there needs to be some changes to operate this coaster again. Honestly, from what I can tell, the park isn't quite sure what they want to do yet. The first and most obvious thing they need to do is do something to the queue line to make sure this never happens again. With the way the park is structured, I don't really think they can move the queue line outside of the ride, because the midway that they would have to go into is a main walkway in the park, and there's really not enough space for it. The only real solution I can see for this problem is the park putting some obnoxiously big covering over the queue line that can protect the riders waiting in line. This will probably be in the form of like a big overhead fence, or even some kind of shield if possible, to keep guests safe from possible flying objects. But another thing you have to take into account is how hot it really gets in Ohio in the summers, so they have to be careful to make sure it wouldn't increase the heat too much in the queue line to the point where it'd be unsafe to stand in. I kind of think the best option would be to just do a building for the queue line. They could put air conditioning in it, and they'd be able to protect the riders from any flying projectiles. But then again, I don't really know how possible that is given the space limitations. Another thing you got to consider is the history of Top Thrill Dragster struggling with downtime and having incidents involving the launch cable. This is one of the most technologically complex roller coasters out there, and it has some of the most downtime out of any roller coaster in the entire world. Those are all factors that could make Cedar Point think twice about investing a significant amount of money into fixing up this roller coaster. Even if this incident didn't happen, I still think the coaster wouldn't have had much more time before it needed a major renovation to some parts of the coaster, including the launch and possibly even the brake run. Also, this accident was very publicized, so people around the world know about this incident. That's definitely going to make a lot of people question if they even want to take the chance of riding this again. However, it appears that this is a catch-22 for the park, as this coaster does a lot for the park. For one, it's one of the most popular roller coasters in the entire park and constantly pulls huge lines. I wouldn't necessarily call this coaster a people eater, but it does get a lot of people through it since the ride is so short and they run usually 5 trains or so on it. Another thing to remember is not only is this the tallest coaster in the park, it is also basically the centerpiece of the park. It's not going to be a good look having this coaster be closed for an entire season, so the park will likely have to make a decision sooner rather than later. Removing this thing would also cost a heck of a lot of money too, as it's in the middle of the park like I mentioned, so they would have to be very careful and delicate when removing this coaster, unlike with Wicked Twister where they could just blow it up and knock it down because of the excess amount of space over on that side of the park. If they do choose to remove it, they're probably going to have to find a replacement pretty quick for this ride, because it's so popular and it's a huge icon for the park. Cedar Point seems to get busier and busier every year, and not having this ride in the lineup will make lines even more painfully long for the other coasters, and that will not be good for guest satisfaction. Also, not to mention, if this ride closes without any chances for last rides, people are going to be very angry and people will demand a giant replacement. Could that be an RMC T-Rex? I don't know at this point, but it'll definitely have to be something big. This situation is very similar to the situation that Volcano the Blast coaster was in a few years back, where the park had to close the ride for maintenance reasons, and the cost to fix the coaster was just too much, so they ended up just closing it, and now they're waiting for that big replacement coaster at the park. Either route Cedar Point chooses to go isn't really going to bode too well for them, and especially with the coaster in need of some sort of renovation, and I'm not even really sure if that's even going to be possible given the park's history with Intamin and how their technology has just changed and evolved over time. You also gotta remember that this coaster opened in 2003, so it's no spring chicken anymore. This coaster is basically a prototype as well, so that doesn't help the ride either. I'm not sure if there's any justification for the park to keep investing money into this ride. They've put so much into it over the years, and these issues probably aren't going away. So if I was in their shoes, I'd probably pull the plug on this ride and just remove it. One option I think would satisfy a lot of people is if they tore it down and built another ride similar to Thrill Dragster in its place, and just call it something simple like Dragster 2, Dragster 2.0. They could maybe have Intamin build it similar to how Red Force was built. Or they could even call up SNS and maybe they could do something really cool. I think an expanded layout would be something that could be in the cards. And maybe the park would even look to try to get the height record back from King Naka. So maybe this could be a blessing in disguise, but only time will tell. All I can say is that Cedar Point's got a daunting decision to make, and it's not going to be an easy one whatsoever. Before you leave, make sure to tell me what you think of this down in the comments below. Do you think the coaster will reopen in its current form, and the park could look to get a few more years out of it and give people a chance to hit their last rides? Or do you think the park will go the renovation route and try to make it something new that will last for years? Or obviously there's always the option to remove it if they choose to do so and replace it with something new. Regardless, I think Thrill Dragster is a fantastic roller coaster, and Cedar Point can either get this thing back open or replace it with something new and worthy of replacing it. That said, if you enjoyed this video or got something out of it, or you'd like to be a pal and help the channel out, make sure to leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel for more roller coaster content coming very soon, hopefully more positive than this video. With all that being said, guys, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.